Hi everyone, this is Venus Brown. Today I'm going to be doing a discussion of Season 1, Episode 8 of House of the Dragon. Yes, I'm a week late. That means that the episode for tonight is starting tonight, so we will hopefully get a reaction out for that fairly soon. But right now, discussion for last week's episode. And I am wearing this black and burgundy dress because I finally started my video that I'm going to be doing of the family ancestry of the Targaryens when it comes to those on the line of succession and those who actually make it to the Iron Throne, along with some of the events and family history. I won't be covering every family member, but I will be trying to cover the ones that are most closely related to the throne. So this was definitely an excellent episode. There were lots of cameo moments in this episode. And the scenes with Viserys, some of them were just so amazing. So amazing. We have lots to talk about, so let's get to it. We start the episode and we hear somebody narrating information about Corlys Velaryon to Rhaenys. He apparently has been stabbed. He fell over in the sea. He is in very dire condition and he has a very bad fever. And so the family is concerned that he could be on his last leg. He could be on his deathbed. So they need to make sure that the line of succession is in place and that it is where they want it to be. Now, who they want it is in this case would be Rhaenys, Rhaenyra, and Vaemond. Vaemond has his own ideas. Vaemond, I think in this show, is being presented as Corlys' brother, and he feels that the people that Corlys has chosen to inherit his family line, which would be Lucerys, he feels they are bastards. He feels they do not have any legitimate Valyrian blood, and he feels that they have no business taking the throne of the Tides and Driftmark. And this is what the majority of this episode is about. It is about the legitimacy of that family line, the legitimacy of Rhaenyra's children, the legitimacy of the person that is going to be taking that position, and the people that are of the Valyrian family name and Valyrian bloodline. So this is what Vaemond proposes he is going to present to the crown, to have the legitimacy of these children questioned and decided so that he can place himself on the throne of Driftmark and the Tides, so he can be on the throne. And I totally get where he's coming from when it comes to that idea that these are bastards, and because of their not being Laenor's legitimate children, them being of Targaryen blood and strong blood, they actually have no Valyrian blood whatsoever, and that makes him feel like this is a complete travesty that ends our actual bloodline. But we also know that the king has already said multiple times that Rhaenyra is the heir, that her children are the heirs, and that nobody should question this, that if anyone questions it or talks about it again, that he will have their tongue. And that comes back to rear its ugly head later on in the episode. Now, this episode, we also start with a 6-year time jump. So the kids that were kids and teens or preteens in the previous episode, they are growing up. They are 6 years older. They are now teens and young adults. And I think that their behavior is starting to really show how they were raised. And it's interesting that The person that Alicent accuses of always flouting the rules and regulations and always doing whatever she wants to and not paying attention to the traditions of Westeros actually seems to be trying to raise decent, upstanding kids. Whereas Alicent, who tries to present herself as this fine, upstanding person who doesn't break the rules, who tries to do everything right, or at least tries to do things the way a traditionalist will believe that she's doing the right thing, seems to be raising kids that are out of control, that are narcissists, that are a little bit psychotic, and that just don't really seem to listen to her all that much. But if you look at the way that she interacts with them when she is mad, when she's disciplining them, it appears she's getting very angry for things that she really has not done a good job at teaching them. That this is how you proceed in life. This is how you proceed in your role. These are the things you should be concerned about. These are the things that you should do. And these are the things you shouldn't do, or at the very least, you should do a better job of covering them up. It doesn't seem like she's taught them that very well, especially Aegon. Aegon, from the beginning, we could see that he was somebody who was going to need some extra attention. He was going to need some extra lessons. And since Viserys doesn't seem to be paying any attention to any of these boys, that's pretty much leaving Alicent and her servants to take care of raising these kids. And we're seeing the results. I will also say that most likely the rearing that Alicent got from Otto Hightower probably is contributing to her not so great mothering when it comes to bringing up these children. I am being very hard on Alicent when it comes to how these children are. Her daughter seems to be fairly well behaved and decent. Yeah, she's a little weird. She's a little strange, but she's not a freaking credent, and she's not running around raping people or attacking them. She's not trying to end the world or anything like that. And she's not trying to end anybody's life. She is not destroying people or taking away their autonomy. So for that, that's great. But I think that's kind of part of Helena's character. Not necessarily that Alicent is doing a better job at raising Helena, but that this is the type of person that Helena is, and so she is this way. And I've heard people on the internet like kind of arguing about the whole nature versus nurture thing. I've always felt like the nature versus nurture argument was kind of an illegitimate argument. It's the wrong question. It's not whether nature is at fault for how a person acts and behaves or what kind of person they become. It's not whether nurture is at fault for how a person acts or behaves or who they become. It's a combination of the two, and all of the events and experience and situations and positions that these children deal with throughout their lives as they're growing up. So, not an either or. It is a both and many, many other things. When it comes to the children, we're going to have to touch on the very, very uncomfortable situation that is approached in the show. I applaud any shows that are willing to approach complicated, uncomfortable topics like this, because they are uncomfortable, they are complicated, but they do happen in real life. And they do need to be addressed. We do really, really, really need to think hard and long about them and try to figure out how better to prevent them, how better to deal with them, and how better to handle every single piece of what has happened, whether it be the perpetrator that committed the crime or the victim that has been affected for the rest of their life by that crime, and the other authority figures that find out about the crime and how they handle that. I think in previous episodes, we could see that it was very, very likely that Aegon was going to turn out to be some kind of just nasty rapist who would spread his seed all over the kingdom and didn't really care one way or another anything about the person that he was victimizing or the person that he was sleeping with. So this is just extending that conversation and showing what that has wrought, what kind of consequences that kind of behavior is going to have. Aegon has become a sickening rapist. He does not seem to understand or care just how awful that is. And he takes it as just having fun. And if you think this is different from real life, you're missing a little bit of reality, because unfortunately, a lot of things like this do actually happen with real people in real life, and sometimes that is exactly how the perpetrator behaves. Sometimes that is exactly how the family members behave. Sometimes that is exactly how the survivors are treated. Even today, even now, in real life. And this is a presentation of a completely different era in a completely different period that is completely make-believe and is still presented as something horrific. So think about that. If this is being considered horrific in this make-believe, horrific, troublesome Game of Thrones type show, House of the Dragon, how do you think it is in real life? In the here and now, in today, when it is actually still happening. When Alicent goes to confront the young girl, she finds out what's going on and she seems to be somewhat sympathetic to the girl, Diana. Okay, and when I heard Diana, if you've watched my reaction, you probably saw me like question the name. Okay, the reason for that, believe me, I will occasionally give some spoilers from Fire and Blood, from Game of Thrones, etc. I try not to give any spoilers that occur after the point that were presented in the most recent episode or whatever promos have been put out. But I see anything that happened before then or that's already been presented on Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon as fair game. So the reason I was questioning isn't something that I can go over very well because it does provide spoilers for other things that are not covered in House of the Dragon or Game of Thrones. If you haven't read Fire and Blood, this may be a spoiler. It is a previous event that happened in Fire and Blood. So if they have any shows that cover previous eras, then this could end up coming up later on, and I apologize for that. But if you don't want to hear it, go ahead, block the sound or whatever it is for a minute or so, and then I'll be done. Okay, so I thought she said Tiana when the girl said her name was Diana. And Tiana is one of the many brides that King Maegor took when he was king and tyrant over Westeros. So that's why I kind of had this questioning look. And then as soon as I realized that that was a name from a previous era or a previous generation, that it would not have been the same person, wouldn't have likely had any relation to that person, that's when I was like, oh yeah, it was just a different generation. So after Alicent initially handles the conversation between her and Diana, she does seem to be a little bit sympathetic at first, and I have to say, I started watching that scene with the assumption that Alicent was going to be a tyrant, that she was going to be horrible about it, and she really wasn't. I should have given her the benefit of a doubt, and I didn't. But I still find how she did react in the end very uncomfortable, very problematic, especially having experienced sexual assault and experienced others who have gone through sexual assault. The way that she handled it was definitely kind of problematic. But then again, we're talking about a very different era of a fictional story and a really rough period in history. But still, very uncomfortable. Very, very uncomfortable. And Allison does tell her that she's sorry. She gives her a hug. She explains that she believes her. These are all things that we should do, that we shouldn't have a problem with when it comes to somebody who's being victimized. But then she does something that often does happen for survivors. She backs her away and says, but I don't know, like what other people are going to think. And I have to approach this according to what other people are going to think. She doesn't say that, but that's what she's indicating. I know that if anyone hears about this, and they will most likely hear about it, they're going to have their own impression and they're going to have their own ideas, and they are likely going to blame the survivor, just like happens in real life. There's so much mirroring of real life in this whole thing, in this event. The girl insists that she'll never tell another soul, but then Alicent corrects her that you've already told 2 people, and now me, so that's 3 people. So how can I trust that you're not going to actually tell people? That's kind of jacked up, if you ask me. Like, this is something she knows she has to do. This is the kind of thing that in that kind of realm is most likely going to be found out. If you say nothing about it, you're going to be considered just as guilty as if you do come out and say something. And she only told people that she really, really felt needed to know this in order to get the information out. She's their servant. She can't continue doing her job as she was without somebody knowing that something is wrong, that something's going on. And so she did go to 2 people, but it was 2 people that she probably should have gone to. Alicent, like, correcting her for already talking to 2 people, to me is just like, what? You're saying this girl is wrong because she was honest about something that she knew was going to come out and that she had to deal with? Come on. Of course, we get the part where the other servant brings in the moon tea. At least we're assuming it's moon tea, in order to correct any possible accidents that may have occurred because of this indiscretion from her son. She also hands her a bag of money. I see this as a payoff, possibly, to try to keep her silence. But not 100% sure on that, because that moon tea may be moon tea. But in the first place, moon tea can be dangerous and toxic, so it can still cause a lot of problems. But in the second place, it could have also been something other than moon tea. She could have been poisoning this girl to just take her out of the picture. And then why would you give her money? Well, if the girl ends up dying, then she can very easily just have one of the guards or servants take the money as she's dying and then dispose of her. So I hope that's not what happened. I'm thinking that might not have been what happened, but part of me is still very bitter and anti-Green and anti-Alicent. So part of me thinks that maybe that's what she did. And frankly, we know how that realm is. We know how people might react to that kind of thing, even though it's fairly well understood that the royal menfolk do create bastards around the realm, and not everybody does anything about it. Let's hope she left that girl alive. Let's hope that this was just a payoff. or maybe even, as somebody had suggested, this is payment because we're going to have to let you go. You aren't going to be able to work around the castle anymore, and so you're going to lose pay. But I think it's a payoff at the very least, and at the worst, it's just money to make it sound like you're being paid off while you slowly die from being poisoned. So, let's hope. Let's hope that she was not actually poisoned. But we don't know that it'll ever even be touched on again in the show, so we don't really know if we're ever going to find out. And we do see right after that, she goes to talk to her son to correct him on this. But again, like I said, it's like she's giving him these punishments and corrections for shit that it doesn't seem like she's really properly trained him on how to be or how to act or how to behave. I don't know. Would that be the case? It definitely seemed like this has happened before, and her kid definitely showed signs that he was going to stray from the beginning, that he would be sowing his oats all over town. So she definitely knew that this was the kind of person he is, and I would assume she would have tried to talk to him. Aegon is such a problem. And then Aegon says that nothing he does is ever good enough. He tries so hard, and probably in his defense, he probably feels that he does try very hard. He probably feels that nothing he says or does is good enough. I mean, his mom said from when he was very young that basically he's going to steal the crown from his half-sister, that he is going to be king of this realm that's expected of him from everybody in Westeros, and that he has no real choice in the matter. So she freaking placed that humongous weight on this kid from the beginning. So maybe he does feel like, I have been doing all this stuff for you. I have been trying so hard to do what you want, to do what you say needs to be done, but none of it's ever good enough for you. I can definitely see how that might be real. That might be truly how he feels. Unfortunately, him raping a girl has no bearing whatsoever on all the incredibly horrible shit that this woman has required of him, has insisted that he has to do to take his place as king of the realm by stealing the throne from his sister. It just doesn't have to do with that. It may be how he deals with things. It may be something that he feels that that it's just what he wants to do, and he gets to do whatever he wants to do because he's a royal little spoiled rotten brat. But raping a person, taking away their autonomy, taking away their control over their own body is not about what mommy or daddy tell you that you have to do to take care of your life and your roles within your life, present, past, or future. One of the themes that I think we see in this episode, outside of the children, okay? Outside of the children, when it comes to the direction that things are going, the plight that each main character, and I'm talking about the main characters Alicent and the main character Rhaenyra, the main plight of them pushing the realm in a certain direction according to what their fathers have laid as their path before them. Both of these lay this path before both of these girls that is very weighty, very hard. And this episode is really showing the weight of those paths, the weight that those decisions have placed on their shoulders. And you see Rhaenyra asking her father, are you sure this is what this meant? Are you sure that this is what you want? Are you sure that I am the one that is supposed to take this throne? Because I really thought I wanted it. I really did. But it is so hard. It's so much to handle. And I don't think I can deal with it. But if this is really what you want, if this is really what the plan is, then you gotta support me. You gotta support my kids. Because without supporting my kids, you're not supporting me. And I don't think I can do this. The weight of it is too much. Later, you see Alicent making comments during the council meeting about how she's uncertain. Then we see it again later on, much later, when we're at the end during the dinner, when Alicent actually says that Rhaenyra will make a wonderful queen, and she seems to almost be resigned with the fact that yes, it should be Rhaenyra that's the queen, and yes, you'll make a good queen. Of course, that gets thrown out later on because of the last scene, but she at least seems to have this distress and weightiness on her shoulders that she's contemplating that maybe the direction that her father has laid for her and her son is not the right direction, especially when Aegon is a credent and Aegon doesn't listen and Aegon does not want the throne and does not want to steal the throne from his sister. I think another theme we see, though, when Rhaenyra and Daemon first get to the castle, they see how different it looks. And me and my kids noticed it too, like something's definitely different. And I told my oldest kid I'm gonna have to like check in previous episodes to see what it looked like, because definitely something is different. It doesn't look right. And I said something about maybe because those banners seem to be black now, and maybe there's something else to it. And Daemon brings it up later, like, you freaking removed the Targaryen heraldry in place of all this religious imagery. And that was definitely something I noticed. As soon as I saw Alicent and I saw that 7-pointed star in the window, I was like, oh no. Serious Cersei vibes. Serious 7-pointed star. Zealots ruling over the kingdom. There is a reason, people, why in many countries the idea of separation of church and state is very important. Because when the church is very embedded within the state government, it can cause major problems. And we saw a lot of the problems that occurred when Cersei had used the faith to manipulate her power within the realm. And it definitely gave me those same vibes as when Cersei was manipulating the faith. Gave me those same vibes. I don't see Alicent as being like Cersei. Not really at all. I think they have very different reasons for being the way they are, and I think they are very different kinds of people. But I still see the parallels there, and it still gives me bad vibes. I'm going to say a little teeny bit about the eggs that we saw Daemon go and collect today. I think there have been 2 points in this show so far, at least, where the egg or eggs that were presented at the time may be a foreshadowing of the eggs that we see in Game of Thrones that Daenerys gets. Now in this case, you have 3 eggs that look exactly the same, that look almost exactly the same as the ones that Daenerys had. But I think there was also an episode previously, Daemon had presented Mysaris an egg that also looked like one of Daenerys' eggs. So I think either one could be a foreshadowing of those eggs that we see in Game of Thrones. The question then becomes which one? Don't know. Don't know, but there's lots of chatter throughout the interwebs discussing this. And of course, we see Viserys again just looking really old, older than ever, bad, just looking really more horrible than ever. Every time I see this guy, I think he can't possibly look any worse. He can't possibly look more decrepit and more like he's going to die at any second. Yet every single episode, he just manages to look really, really horrible. And in this case, he looked so much worse than he looked before. And we thought he looked bad before. Holy cow. This guy looked like a freaking skeleton with almost no flesh on him. Like that bad. And he just looks like he's rotting away. Really, really disgusting. But he's in this horribly bad shape. And his loved ones that haven't seen him for 6 years visit and see him like this. And it's so bad that Daemon can't even bring himself to look at him. And you can see the discomfort in both of their faces when you see a family member like this in so much pain and in so much distress and so close to being on their deathbed. It hurts. It's awful. Still manages to come through for Rhaenyra during these proceedings. I do want to address some of the ideas that have come up. I think I may have addressed this in one of the previous discussions a little bit, but I've been thinking about it some more. The idea that maybe the Maesters or Alicent are possibly poisoning him to death. I think that is a possibility, but then you got to wonder, if they are poisoning him to death, why is it taking so long? And so this is my conspiracy theory idea for the matter. That if they very, very, very slowly poison him, they keep him addled and unable to have any power over the realm, and able to get out of the bed, and able to do the things he needs to do as king, then they can keep him down and out. They can keep him hidden while they stay in power. And they don't even have to worry about any power changing hands, really, because they're in control. Because they are basically controlling the realm while he's like that. Once Viserys dies, you end up with this situation because of the path that both Rhaenyra and Alicent have had laid before them. You end up with a situation where the realm is going to war. I think we've known this for a long time. This is what's coming, and especially after this episode, that is what is going to happen. The realm is going to war. So, to prevent war, but still have control over everything that's happening in the realm, what if we keep slowly poisoning the king? We keep him alive, but we keep him just barely alive enough for him to have life, to show up every now and then for one or two ceremonies every few years or so, but not enough for him to have any real control over the kingdom. Not enough for him to have any real control over the realm. So that's my thought on the matter of why they would be poisoning him, but it would be taking so long for him to die. Now, we also know from other material that Viserys has a disorder that is supposed to be contributing to his wounds and to his ill health. But in order to keep him from actually being able to do the job that the king actually needs to do while they take control over the realm. There is this knowledge and understanding that a lot of the maesters throughout the history throughout Targaryen history do not agree with the Targaryen traditions, like multiple marriages at the same time, like marrying into your own family, that kind of stuff, and want the Targaryens and their dragons, frankly, completely out of the realm, want them off the throne, and want them gone. So there is this understanding that maybe this is part of it, that this is a slow path to slowly taking down the dragons and the Targaryens so that they are no longer in control of the realm. Which, of course, goes very much against this prophecy that Viserys has brought up a couple times now in this series. One of these scenes, we see Rhaenys and Rhaenyra over at the Godswood. And of course, Rhaenyra is hoping that she can manage to convince Rhaenys to support her claim, even though she knows that Rhaenys believes that Rhaenyra had her son killed. Rhaenys definitely confronts her about that. Rhaenyra proceeds to explain that she understands that this is what she thinks, but that she did not have her son killed, that she loved her son, and that she wasn't complacent in it either, which I think is important, because when you are guilty of something, you can be actively guilty of something by actually doing it or taking part in having that thing ordered. But you can also be passively guilty of it by not stopping it, by knowing that something might happen and not doing what you need to do to get it stopped, or by not saying anything. And she seems to make it clear that maybe she didn't actually have Laenor killed, and that maybe she wasn't actually complacent in it. But you can't tell necessarily if she's being honest, because Rhaenyra has lied straight through her teeth before. And Rhaenys doesn't necessarily like Rhaenyra in the first place. I think there's a certain amount of respect. I think Rhaenys understands the position that Rhaenyra is in, that the position that she has been put in, and why it's problematic, but that she still, like, who's going to forgive the possibility that this person might have killed your child? So then the question becomes, does Rhaenys actually believe Rhaenyra when she tells her that she didn't kill her kid? She basically says that she's going to stand alone. Whatever decision I make, I could support you, but they're not going to listen to that. They're going to make their own decision anyway. I'm not going to have the support of anybody. And maybe Rhaenys has kind of felt that way throughout. Corlys seems to support her when it comes to that she should have been the queen to the throne, that her crown was taken from her. But beyond that, she has not had the support of her family. She has not had the support of the king. She has not had the support of the Greens or the Blacks. In this situation, even her husband, who does support her, is not there and is possibly on his deathbed. She doesn't have the support of anyone. And that's kind of how I look at it. So we begin the proceedings of discussing the legitimacy of Rhaenyra's children and who is the rightful heir to Driftmark and the Tides. And we start with Vaemond giving his speech. So we begin these proceedings with Vaemond explaining his side and how he sees this and why he believes this inheritance of Driftmark should rightfully go to him. And then after he is done, then Rhaenyra comes up. And as Rhaenyra is starting to speak, and she addresses that this is a farce, then Viserys comes in. I'm telling you guys, I think everybody was like in shock and awe. This was like the longest walk of love while this person is literally dying, with this old dying man slowly walking down the hall to take his throne. And it's like the most moving show of support for a loved one that I have seen really in a very long time. One of the guard comes up to help him, and he tells them, I will sit this throne today. And he tells the guard that he's got this, that he is going to go all the way up there. And I remember when we first saw him, we're like, God damn, like, give this guy a wheelchair or something. But I get it. Like, the reality that you are the king, you are on your deathbed, but you are going to support your child in this act of love by walking all the way up there to the throne. You are showing your strength even as you're dying. Like, that I get so much. And it was amazing, and it was moving, very, very incredible. This guy definitely deserves all the freaking awards for this. Then we see this really moving moment where King Viserys' crown falls, and Daemon comes up, and he thinks it's one of those guards, and he's like, I already told you I'm going onto the throne. I don't need your help. And he sees that it's Daemon there. It was so freaking moving. And we come to find out from the internet, this wasn't something that was planned, that it just happened this way. And there were some people that were saying he just happened to like manage to get the camera angle just right to get that scene like it was. But I'm pretty sure in a lot of presentations like this, you have cameras in various places in the room when scenes like this are happening, so that you can use whatever view seems to be the most appropriate at the time. So there's no guarantee that there weren't already cameras in the correct position to take this kind of footage right when it happened. I don't see this as a problem that makes it unlikely that this wasn't planned. And I'm pretty sure that people who were actually part of the shooting of the scene had actually said that it was not planned. I will kind of always believe that Daemon does love his brother, that Daemon has wanted what is best for his brother. When we first see Daemon, Daemon is young, Daemon is arrogant, and Daemon is immature. And so he does a lot of really jacked up shit. He has a funny way of showing his love. And sometimes that's how people are. Sometimes that's how their relationship is. I also feel like Daemon was put in positions from the very beginning that were partially contributed by Otto Hightower. Like, Otto Hightower's hand in so many of the things that have happened in this realm from the last king and this king, it really looks so meddlesome and so wrong. And I do feel like Otto and Daemon have never got along, and Otto had it in for Daemon from the beginning and has done whatever he can to make Daemon look as bad as possible. And Daemon was already not the best person with the best moral character and quality. And so Otto used that in order to really keep Daemon looking like he was a horrible person that cannot be trusted on the throne, when really it is Otto Hightower that is the person that really can't be trusted. Viserys finally gets up to the throne, and he tells them, like, I'm really, really freaking confused. This is stuff that was already set down. It was already decided. Why am I here years later, repeating the same decisions that have already been made a long time ago? And we know that Viserys does not like things being dragged back up. We know that he feels like once this is done, once I have said my piece, that's it, it's done. We don't need to be talking about this anymore, and you better not bring it back up. Yet, Here we are, years and years later, and we're discussing these same problems again when I already made my decision. I'm still the king. I am still alive. I might be close to my death, but I'm still alive. The only person that could possibly have anything more to say about this issue that is here right now is Rhaenys. Then Rhaenys has her chance to say her piece. King Viserys was up there, and she knows King Viserys' position on this matter. And she knows that King Viserys is not going to change his mind on this position. And she knows her husband's position on the matter. That she can then be okay with the idea that these children, even if they are bastards, are going to inherit my husband's position. And since this child is marrying my other grandchild, that Valyrian bloodline is still going to carry on. The desire to have my female grandchildren inherit this position is still being somewhat carried forward because they will be married in. So, of course, the king thinks, okay, that's it. That's all. Everything's said and done. Everything is settled, and this is done. I don't want to hear any more shit about this anymore. It's done. Get the fuck out of here. Let me go and freaking die in peace. And Vaemon is, like, not having any of it. You might decide this kind of thing for your house, but you don't get to make those decisions in my house. You gotta love Vaemon for just speaking the truth and just laying it all out and saying it exactly how he sees it. But you also gotta know that he knew he was not getting away with that. He knew he was gonna die. What he was doing was treason, and there was no way he was coming out of it at the other end alive. The fact that Viserys pulls out his dagger and says, I'll have your tongue for that. What, are you gonna freaking come down there after half an hour and slice his tongue out while somebody holds him in place for half an hour? But it is what should be expected. The king is not going to put up with that kind of treasonous talk, with that kind of language being spoken of his daughter and his grandchildren. You just freaking accused my grandkids of being bastards when I said this fucking discussion is done. And I already said I would have the tongue of anybody who freaking brings this shit up again. You're done. You're toast. And you called my daughter a whore. Like, what are you thinking? Daemon was waiting for him to say what he was going to say. So it's not surprising at all that Daemon was already over there by the point that he did this, because he'd had a little bit of time to get over there, and he freaking sliced that guy's head clean off. Like, oh my God. And the fact that he sliced it off in such a way that it left the tongue intact, but hanging out there, that was wow. Those graphics effects people, man, I give you a lot of credit, because that was freaking disgusting and amazing. It was so awesome. I got it in my picture on here. The image of Vaemon getting his head sliced clean off and that blood just spewing out. When they show them working on Vaemon's body to get it ready for burial, I was like, oh my God, that's just disgusting. And then the Maester starts talking to Rhaenys about, oh, well, you know, you can go now because I don't think the stranger wants you to see this kind of thing. And she's like, dude, I have seen the freaking work of the stranger so many times. Do you think he really gives two shits about the death that I see? Like, seriously? No, I am fine. I have seen enough of the stranger to know what death looks like. Get to the end of the episode, and Viserys has requested that they have this last dinner, like the Last Supper. Before Viserys is likely to die. And he starts talking to them, and then he takes his mask off, which, ugh, like nobody wants to see that. But then he tells them, I want you to see me as I truly am. As your father, as your husband, as your brother, as your grandsire, because I don't have long to walk among you. And I want this division and anger and hatred and fighting to stop. So we're family, we need to be together, all that kumbaya stuff. But we get this dinner, everything seems happy and nice. It's like this little dream sequence. I suspect that some of it is forced, fake smiling and laughter and clapping and all of that, especially from Otto Hightower. But I also suspect that some of it was real, genuine, caring and loving and happiness just for that hour or so while the king was there. It did not surprise me one tiny bit that as soon as he left, all hell was going to break loose. I figured that was going to happen. The fact that they put the fucking pink dread right in front of Aemon as Viserys is leaving, and no, I know it's not really the pink dread. That pig was much bigger than the one that was set down. But, oh my god, like you knew that was going to just spur things on. But even if they didn't, I am 100% confident that once Viserys left the room, all hell was going to break loose. And Aemon having his little toast where he goes and calls Rhaenyra's brown-haired kids Strongs over and over again. Yeah, you know what he was after there. You knew what was going to happen. You knew it was going to spur on a big fight, and it did. Daemon and Aemon's facial expressions, though, this whole time, throughout the dinner, in the previous proceedings, and after Viserys left, that was really good. And I really felt like you got Aemon, like, really kind of admiring Daemon, and kind of like Daemon's little mini-me. That's how I felt. They definitely have their resemblances. They definitely have some similar characteristics. And I definitely see how it looks to me like Aemon has a certain amount of admiration for his uncle. But I think Aemon is at this point more vicious and more awful. And I think that is going to result in some really, really horrible shit. Now that the king has passed on to another realm and the Game of Thrones is proceeding to the next scenario, I think we know war is coming, and this is the beginning. The previous episodes, they were the beginning of the games. This episode, it's the beginning of the war. Before I go, spillage of the tea of Viserys to Alicent at the very end, as he is getting ready to die. He is drunk off milk of the poppy. He is speaking to Alicent about something that she knows nothing about, and he doesn't even realize it's Alicent because he thinks that it is Rhaenyra. Of course, Alicent is hearing what she wants to hear. We're all aware there are two Aegons in the realm at the point that Viserys says this to Alicent. The king has been very, very clear that he is keeping Rhaenyra in the line of succession. That her children are in the line of succession. Even if she has no clue what he's talking about when he says Aegon, that he's actually talking about Aegon the Conqueror, even if she has no clue, she knows at that point that there is her son Aegon and that there is Rhaenyra's son Aegon. She knows damn well that Rhaenyra is supposed to be next in line, that Viserys has every intention of Rhaenyra to take the position, and as soon as Rhaenyra becomes queen, all of her children become princes. I think Alicent knows that she is just taking what she wants to hear and she's going to utilize it to get what she wants, which is her son on the throne. Despite her knowing that her son is a freaking Credent who doesn't want the throne, who is not an ideal leader, and who should not be on the throne. I think she's just going to use this as an excuse. Viserys spilled the tea to the wrong person who's going to take it the way she wants to hear it, who's going to completely misconstrue everything he said. Let the war begin. The other spilling of tea we see when Viserys is approached by Alicent's serving girl. So who is Mysera working for at this point? I don't know. We know the last time we saw her, she was working for Otto Hightower, but we don't know that that's who she's working for this time. And the fact that she's getting tea on stuff going on in the royal castle when Rhaenyra and Daemon and all of their children no longer live there and aren't staying there anymore, makes me think that she could possibly be working for the other side now. And that would also mean that Alicent's serving girl is working for the other side as a spy. That brings us to what we can expect for next episode. This definitely gets the ball rolling. We saw that Viserys seemed to have taken his last breath at the very end of the episode. I'm going to get this all recorded and loaded as quickly as I can because we have another episode of House of the Dragon coming tonight. So you know right now I am recording this on Sunday and the next episode is supposed to come out tonight. So I will be trying to get the reaction for this episode done as quickly as I can. The discussion, I usually wait a little longer because I want to make sure I know what I'm talking about. I want to make sure that I've seen some of the scenes a couple times, that I've had time to digest everything. I've had time to take some notes and figure out exactly how I want to lay out my discussions. So hopefully I'll see you soon for the reaction, and I'll see you a little later for the discussion of the penultimate episode of House of the Dragon, Season 1, Episode 9. Can't wait for it. I think it's going to be exciting. All right, everyone, so I will see you next time. If you like this, please give it a like. If you want to subscribe and get more content, click the subscribe button, click the little bell, and you'll get more content. Thank you for watching. See you when I see you. Bye.